You're tuned into the God Stories Radio Podcast. www.godstoriesradio.com.
Welcome to God Stories Radio, Session 15. I'm Fritz.
I'm Mike.
15 sessions, Mikey.
I can't believe it.
That's just unreal what God's done.
It is. He is working, and we're just being obedient to what He called us to do, and we've got him lined up for another month or so.
I know it. And, you know, just a few weeks ago, we were sitting around scratching our head going, who could we get on the program?
We were.
Who would take time to actually give their testimony on the program?
And I thought, you know, before we started this, I started to go online and check certain sites, and there was a lot of sites that you could write in your testimony. So I thought when we did this, that we were going to have people calling us and or not calling, but at least writing us and blogging us that I want to give my testimony. And I started to pray about it, and God told me just stay where you're at and keep drawing from here. So that's what I'm going to do.
Who knew that God was going to bless it right in our own back door?
Really unbelievable.
Speaking of which, we have some special guests tonight. Who do we have, Mikey?
We have Ken McDermott and John Durham from War. And Ken's here to give his actual personal testimony tonight.
We have the war portion of the Men of War.
Yeah, we do.
I like that.
I don't know, man. You just strike me as a brother that's battle hardened. You've been through
a few.
That's what I'm saying. Well, man, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
We're excited to hear your testimony.
Well, I'm glad to be here, and it's my hope that this impacts somebody so that they get to where I'm at now faster than they would have otherwise. You know, I don't want them to hear the message and it doesn't do anything for them. It isn't effective if you just listen to it and don't learn anything from it. I grew up in a military family. My father was 32 years in the Army, and I wasn't raised in church, and I don't blame him for that. He was a Vietnam veteran. His dad was Navy, kind of hard. And I didn't know the full story on how my dad was raised until in my teenage years. And it was bad. His father was physically, verbally abusive. And we didn't go to church. He always instilled values in me, which I still carry today. And I have since I was a kid, but the spiritual values were lacking when I grew up. I mean, I went through most of my adult life. I joined the Army at 18. I spent 10 years active, and I think there's been certain spots in my life that I can remember. I remember when I was small. I went to a church with a friend of mine named Jonathan, and I don't recall how many times I went there, but I always enjoyed it. And then we moved away from there. We'd move every 3 years. And so it was spotty, and I don't recall ever going back after that. When I'd lose people close to me, and we would attend the funeral. And I think a lot of young adults will do that. They go through something tragic, and it kind of draws them in for a short period of time because I guess you really don't know where else to turn. And I always believed God was up there. It's just I didn't know him. And I really didn't. I only wanted him on my terms, you know. And if it was it would be short times, like weeks after I lost my grandfather. I can remember that I'd ask my uncle about God, and and he would answer the questions for me, but nobody ever sat me down and explained it enough where it would sink in. So it was always a temporary thing. I would bounce in and bounce back out. And then when I hit my 20s and I was out on my own, 18, I left the house, joined the Army. And by my 20s, I was just kind of doing doing my thing. And then I really didn't have time for God. I would see him, and I never was an atheist. I always believed he was up there. It's just I didn't really have time for him, and I didn't feel like, he had other things to do. He's a busy guy. He probably doesn't have much time for me either, especially since I know he's up there, but I didn't really want much to do with him because it was going to, for lack of a better word, I guess, cramp my style or get in the way of what I wanted to do. And I ran kind of crazy for those 10 years in the service. I mean, it was out of control. I was not living right. I was living like a typical GI, and I think that's pretty much, partying. Alcohol was a big part of my life. Not to the point where I was an alcoholic, but that's how we have fun. That's what we did. I was never overly nice to anyone. I wouldn't go out of my way to be nice to you. I wouldn't go out of my way to be rude, but I wasn't overly friendly. And then I got out of the military, went through a few jobs, got into the field I'm in now, and we were stationed I was 39, and we were assigned in Texas. And I wasn't going through anything particularly difficult at the time. I mean, I was making a decent living. I had 2 children, and life was okay. I didn't like Texas much, but other than that, life was pretty good. But we're out there, and I think it was a Thursday morning. I had a coworker who was one of the local cops. And I went to work one day, and I asked him, hey, this coming Sunday, is there any good churches around here? And I have no idea why I asked him that. I wasn't planning on asking it, but I got to work, and I just got this bug, and I was like, do you know of a good church? And then he tells me about this church up the road from the house, and he said, I went there when I was, my marriage was in trouble, and this place, really saved my marriage, turned it around for me. I wasn't having marriage problems. Like I said, things were pretty good. And I didn't tell my wife because I didn't know how she would react to it. So that Sunday morning, I just kind of sprung it on her. I woke her up about 7:30, and I shook her awake, and I'm like, hey, honey, get up, get dressed, we're going to go to church. That's what she did. She rolled over, she looked up at me, and she's like, what did you say? And I was like, let's go, we got to get the kids up, we're going to go to church. And she just laid there for like 2 minutes looking at me with this look on her face like, what? I think she was probably thinking, who are you and where's my husband? Yeah. What did you do? Because when we initially met, I asked her to marry me 3 times. And the 3rd time she said yes, but the first 2 it was, no. And she said it was because I was mean. And I would talk to her the way I couldn't get the Army out of me. And I would talk to everybody the same way. It wasn't rude to me. It was how I've been talked to since I was 18. I was used to it. But that's not popular when you're trying to get a girl to marry you. So, she told me no, and the 3rd time she said yes. And then that Sunday, I hit her with that let's go to church thing, and she just laid there for a minute, and she got up, and she got dressed, and we got the kids dressed, and that Sunday we went to service, and I don't really know. The next part it's hard to explain. I left the service, and the message was good, and then I got home and sat down, and I started really thinking about, because he spoke about, your eternal life, and how the life you spend on earth is It's just really, it's a blink. You know, if you compare it to God's watch, it's not even a tick on the hand of it. I mean, it's so short. And I started thinking about that, and, you know, like I said, I'd never been an atheist, but I think I sat down and took a really good look at, you know, where do I want to be when this is over? And how important is the brief time that I have here? And what should I be doing with it? I went back that Wednesday evening, same church, listened to another message. And for the first few sermons, the things that were going through my head, it felt like he was talking to me. Like I could have showed up there, been the only one in church, and the message would have been right on. And I came home and I told my wife, I'm like, every time, because I would talk to her about these things that were going on. And every time we'd come out of there, I'm like, you know, are you telling him, you know, what I'm telling you? Because, you know, it was so pointed that literally we could have been sitting at a table having a conversation about the exact things that we talked about.
Was she a Christian at this time?
She was a Christian when she was younger. And my wife has had now, I look at it, now that I'm a Christian, and I look back and I look at her, and she, to me, is proof that God is real. She's proof of it, because she had a horrible, horrible life growing up. And if he wasn't real, there's no way she would be the person that she is today. No way. And at the time, I didn't think about it, but I knew that she had been, and she was a Christian when she was younger. And that's part of the thing that really started convicting me, as I was looking at her and I'm thinking, you know, she was a Christian when at some point before she met me, but how far have I led her on the path that I was walking, you know? Did she follow me down this wrong road? And is it my fault that she's not a Christian anymore, or not as close as she was to God before I was in her life? We talked and talked and talked, and I kept going back to church on the Sundays, and then I'd go back on Wednesdays. And one night after the Wednesday service, I was sitting in the back, and I told my wife, I'll meet you out there at the car in a minute. And I was sitting in the church, and the whole place was empty. And the pastor had finished preaching, and they were cleaning things up. And he came down off the stairs to leave. And I asked him, I walked up to him, and I said, how can I get what they have? You know, I want to be closer to God. I want to know God. I want God to know me. And he took me through salvation. He explained it to me. And I went home. He told me to pray about it, so I did. And I confessed my sins, and I asked, you know, God to forgive me and make me who he wanted me to be. Because I was a good provider, but I was not a good father or a good husband. Because there's a difference between providing for your family and doing what you're supposed to do for your family. I mean, if money was all there was to it, I was good.
That's right.
Because I was taking care of them. They had a roof, they had food. I'd always done that. But I missed out on the most important part of being a father and a husband. I went back, I got baptized. You know, I gave my life to God, and then a week later, me and my son were sitting on the couch. He's 16 years old. And I was saved. So we were sitting on the couch, and I asked him. Now, he had grown up with the other kin. And the one he knew was no nonsense, you know, kind of rough. And we're sitting on the couch, and I asked him, you know, what do you think about God? And he's like, Dad, you know, I don't even believe in that. You know, it's a fairy tale. And I can tell you, as a dad, that is not a good place to be.
It's not.
because